Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pat's Creative Podcast. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Nickolai Boulton. Did I pronounce that correctly? I probably should have asked before, but...
Yeah. I mean, you could call me Nick. It's fine.
Okay, awesome. Nick, I've known about you for a while now, just kind of seen you around working with a lot of other teams that I'm definitely familiar with like That One Video Gamer and Normal Boots and stuff like that. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here. Would you care to introduce yourself to the people out there?
So I'm Nickolai Boulton. I'm a motion designer, video editor, video producer, and director. I used to do YouTube stuff. It's still pretty up in the air, but I'm mostly a freelance, and I work with a lot of online media and a lot of online creatives.
Gotcha. It doesn't happen super often, but I love getting freelancers on here and people just in design in general, because I'm majoring in graphic design right now. Although I might have more interests in other areas, but it's always great to see just the thought processes behind other graphic designers and stuff like that, or at least adjacent to graphic designers. I don't mean to label you as something you're not, or you don't prefer to be labeled as. But basically, I appreciate having people with your expertise here. The first question I kind of wanted to ask, it's just a general question I like to ask a lot of people, is just, how did you get involved with this industry? What were your interests going in? What were your interests in the work you do now before you got in the industry, and whether or not you've kind of always considered yourself an artist? What's the kind of backstory on that?
So, I have always considered myself an artist, absolutely. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to make cartoons, and I wanted to become a director and make movies, all that business.
Right.
That's always been a thing of mine. There's never been a point in my life where I didn't know what to do or what I wanted to do, which is, I understand as a privilege, honestly. I feel,
sure.
Which is, yeah. I started my career distinctly, mostly around high school. It's when I first started dabbling in real video editing and things like that. I went to university, and around that time I was thinking a lot about video games and game design, in the context of the media studies that I was doing. And I was like, you know what, I've got some neat ideas to take this really rugged design ethos and scholarly kind of angle, and sure, I want to make it entertaining. And I started off on YouTube making, I'm not going to beat around the bushes here, but a sequelitis ripoff called Extra Life. And it was, I had a joke about Adorno and things like that. It was very I tried my best to make some dry stuff funny by screaming
sure,
a lot. And, I was a lot younger. I put a lot of stuff out on forums. And as I grew and I made more stuff and I kept pushing what I could make, it eventually got picked up by people. And, I got hired by some people here and there, and I just tried to maintain a sense of professionalism. When I started getting into YouTube, I actually started intently as I want to make stuff to create a reel so then I can get hired.
Sure.
And it just turned out that it was within the same the same online sphere, not by some studio or some I don't know, TV
right,
agency or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because around the time when you started, that was it's still very much a growing industry, right? On YouTube, there was still a lot of studios kind of first starting out looking for that kind of talent, right? Did you find that have you noticed any kind of difference in that look for talent as the years have gone on, or has it been mostly steady for you?
So I started off with freelance through Twitter mostly, and making connections through Twitter. I think I straight up think that Twitter is one of the most important tools for an artist.
Sure.
Because it's essentially a digital business card at this, by today's standards. It's how you find a lot of people within your same profession, within your same industry, things like that. But I said before that I posted things on forums So I posted things on my original YouTube videos on the Hidden Block forums and the TOVG forums, which, and some of it got highlighted, some of it didn't, and that's how I made a good circle of friends and made connections that way. So that was like how I broke into like a Twitter sphere in itself.
Right.
To answer your question though, it's more like whether people are, I don't think people are like really creating forums for creators now, which is honestly kind of fine. I think
Sure.
those things are kind of regulated to more like Discord groups now. And those are a lot easier to find. And I don't know if it's easier to get work through those, or to really stand out of them, because I think Discord's one of those things that's very easy to kind of like scroll by or mute.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
like you join a thing, instantly mute channels.
Right.
uh,
Absolutely. The works.
yeah, but in order to find, by today's standards, I think the best way to find work is through Twitter, 100%.
Sure. Well, I mean, just for networking in general, it feels almost like you said essential for a lot of artists. Like, I mean, I think
Yeah,
I talked to you through Twitter, and that's how we got this interview, right?
yeah,
And it feels so set up for integrating other people's businesses with your own, because of like even just showing these persons follow this person that and stuff like that.
hmm
I I always say I look forward to a day where I maybe don't have to use Twitter for networking and art and stuff like that, because there's a few things on the site I'm not super fond of, but it absolutely is
yeah.
very important for a lot of digital artists out there specifically. Um, so what you said, you've always considered yourself an artist. Have there been other art forms that you've enjoyed outside of your current career path, like perhaps music or something of a similar note?
I mean, like I used to play drums in high school, uh,
Okay,
and I sold my drum kit to make my first editing PC, but
I
I've
feel like there's
always
some symbolism there.
ha
Yeah.
clever pun.
Oh,
So
I wasn't meaning it as a pun. I meant it realistically. Thank you for putting that in my head, though. That's why
yes,
you laughed. I was like, was that funny? I don't know. You're
symbolism.
clearly the
Yeah.
drummer. I'm not the drummer, so
Badooch. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I've done quite a few things creatively. I've done a lot of I did stage production like way back in the day. I did live performances, musical. I'm not musically inclined anymore, I don't think.
Sure.
I The thing is with doing work nowadays and all of my work being creatively focused, I've recently been getting into like film photography. I found my dad's old camera from like 1984 or something like that,
No
and
kidding.
I've just been shooting on that because I was like, I want to just like have a creative outlet that isn't like monetized or
Right.
something that it's just
Yeah.
like I want to like that can be tangential to like learning other things, like learning more about lenses and just how grain kind of works, and just like getting I work
Absolutely.
in when I work in like visual effects, I want to like engage with more like texture and like real life and like seeing how that works, and just quite literally having a new lens to look that through uh, has
Right.
been has been really good. Yeah, I feel like I've just been like one of those people that will just keep creating, and like if I find something that interests me, I'll do it. Like
Sure.
at at the moment, when I get a break from freelance, I would like to pick up some more 3D programs like Cinema 4D or Blender. I'd like to
Right.
dabble into Unreal 5 because a lot of visual effects is leaning in that direction as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and who knows? Like
Well,
maybe I'll end up working on games more or something like that in like
sure.
10 years from now. I don't know yet.
Well, you've kind of opened up a window of interest, because I've also am very, or at least used to be a lot more interested in photography, and I think it was Naveed Mahebi who he brought up photography also, and it just spiraled off into this other long conversation. So I'm gonna quickly pick your brain about photography. What primary content do you like to shoot with photography? Like, do you find that you shoot a lot of people, a lot of scenery, or maybe like trash on the streets or something like that? Like what's your preferred type of content for that?
So I kind of just like I'm very project focused. Like whenever I live
Sure.
really rural at the moment. Like I live in the middle of nowhere. So I like taking photos of just like scenery a lot because that's kind of what I can take photos of. But sometimes I'll take a trip into the city to like see some friends or something, and I'll like just take photos of places that are very nostalgic to me because
Sure.
you know I don't have a lot of photos of the areas that I grew up with or anything like that. And,
Right.
um, as I took a trip away from New Zealand for like about a year and a half. And when I came back, all of the spaces that I recognized were like very different. And I saw them
Interesting.
like actively changing because uh, gentrification. Uh, so
Right.
I wanted to take, I wanted to capture more of like areas that I can still recognize like while I can. Um,
Right.
yeah, so I wanted to capture things that are like nostalgic and like that trigger distinct memories for me.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And what part of the composition do you value most? Like, do you like just the alignment of things? Do you like the maybe the colors or the like? Because I understand. I've never worked with film photography specifically, but I understand
Mm.
like trying to get that perfect shot can be a lot more involved than some of the digital cameras. Is there something you always look out for to like be like, okay, now this is a good photo because I was able to hit this one piece, this one part of the composition? Like, is there any box you have to check for your photos, basically?
Um, hmm. I feel like I've been a lot more like loosey goosey with it, honestly. Like I've
Okay.
because it's been something that I wanted to pick up for fun.
Right.
Um, and I'm definitely like one of the people that learns best by failing.
Sure.
if I screw up, then I'm like, okay, I like this is what I did. Like I can try this, this, and this. Like this didn't
Right.
turn out. How would I fix it next time? Um, so for me, I just kind of like try and be present about what's around me and what's interesting around me.
Right.
And in terms of like composition, I mean like rule of thirds is a classic that
Yeah.
I definitely like lean on to here and there. But I'm definitely a fan of like distinct juxtaposition, like
Right.
that's
Okay.
like more thematic juxtaposition. I recently when I had to like get my car fixed and I had like an hour around in the town uh, to do nothing, and I brought my camera. So I went like under bridges and I took photos of like
Nice.
graffiti and stuff, but I distinctly like framed it in a way that captured a lot of like the overgrown grass or like a lot of the
Sure.
foliage coming in. I'm like, I really like this like over. I like the aesthetic of like overgrown urbanization, like having
Absolutely.
this juxtaposition that conflicts like this man-made like street aesthetic that's like very like distinct, like 100% man-made, and like nature just like kind of not
Yeah.
giving a shit.
Definitely.
Like I enjoyed that. So like, am I gonna have that same process with every single photo? Probably not. Am I
Right.
gonna? But like that's kind of like why I'm learning, because I want to try and
Right.
find out what can work for me and like what how I can see these new things. It's this new
Yeah.
creative outlet is like a new way to like look at things.
Right. So you previously you haven't had much photography experience. This is still kind of new for you.
Um, I did a little bit of photography in high school, which was also film photography, but it was very much more about like light manipulation, like
Gotcha.
drawing on and having long exposures and things like that, and kind of trying to tell a story across
Right.
like tons of multiple photos. Um,
Sure.
and I'm a different person now. I'm a significantly different person than who I
Sure.
was. So I think my creative process has changed a lot, and I was like, I wonder how I would approach things now, because when I was younger, I was just like kind of making shit up as I went along, and
Absolutely.
I didn't have like a goal about like what I wanted to seek out. I was just like,
Right.
I think this will work out if I just do it, and sometimes that works, but
Sure.
I think it's one of those things that is it's interesting seeing the differences of how
Yeah,
you calculate things from how you used to be
absolutely.
it.
It's
I'm not that to answer your question though, I'm not that good with photography. Like I
right. No,
genuinely don't understand a lot of
sure.
stuff.
Yeah, no, I definitely am not either. When it comes to a lot of art forms, I'm a lot of bark with no bite, like in theory I might know these things, but actual
Yeah.
execution, I'm probably just as scrubby as someone who's never touched a camera before. But it's
Mm.
still interesting to talk. That's why I run a podcast, I don't
Yeah.
create any of this stuff. I just get to talk about it. Um but yeah, no, uh like a big thing you were mentioning, like the idea of like creating a narrative through like a lot of pictures. I don't want to
Mm.
get super into this just because I've already talked about it in another podcast. But one thing I did was during a photo walk, I brought a tripod around because I thought I might actually want to use it and set it up and take pictures of things. But I found that I was never wanting to use the tripod because it's just a big hassle, and I'd rather just get on my hands and knees and actually take the picture and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked like an idiot walking around while all my other classmates, they didn't bring tripods. They knew what they were doing. So I'm just carrying around this tripod and I'm the only one doing it. So what I started doing was taking pictures of the tripod during the walk, and I kind of created a narrative of like, just like a children's book of like a tripod looking for his camera and stuff. But I was really focusing on like trying to put the tripod where the shot was going to be taken from, so you could see that the tripod was set up for a shot. There's just no camera on the tripod because obviously I was holding the camera.
I like that.
So yeah, things like that I probably had the most fun with in photography. But also just in general, like I loved playing with shadows and line work. Those were like the two biggest things for me. If I could find some interesting lines that go across the screen, then it's like it was photography aesthetic for me. So, um,
Mm.
and shadows and lines often go hand in hand. But I don't mean to stay on this forever. It's just always a pleasure when I get to hear someone who is interested in another art form. I also always am obligated to ask. You've never been a barista, right?
No, I've never been a
Okay,
barista.
no worries. One day I'm going to interview someone who has espresso making experience, and then I can really gush about an art form. But until then, I still have plenty of other art forms to talk about, right? You've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned a little bit of like, because I didn't realize you had worked on your own channel before and stuff and done more on screen work. How do you feel about on screen performing? Like, is that something you typically shy away from, or do you value it as equally as post production and stuff like that? Like, what's your kind of thoughts on actually performing in the content that you work on?
Oh, me as a performer?
Yeah, you as a
Um,
performer, like, is that something you find yourself good at, just don't do a lot in your profession, or what's your general take on that?
I mean, like, I enjoyed it when it came to like getting my ideas across for my own YouTube channel. It was very very fun.
Sure.
But uh, like when it comes to like working with others, I'm perfectly fine when it comes to performing or acting. I've done like a little bit of it. I don't want to say that I'm like good at it or that it's something
Sure.
that I distinctly want to like lean towards. But
Right.
like I think as an editor, it's extremely important to understand good acting
Yeah.
and like what it's like to be stage presence, and even more so if you want to do directing, right? Like how are you going to direct
Right.
someone how to think or feel if you haven't had that same kind of experience?
Sure.
And just like knowing how people think and function, empathy goes a long way when it comes to directing.
Right.
But like I'm personally not like uncomfortable being on camera. I'm not uncomfortable like recording my voiceover or anything like that. To me, it's a process that I will do for the sake of getting the final product done.
Right.
Um, if it was up to me, I would probably hire somebody else to do acting instead of me.
Sure.
Uh, I would work with people that are more talented than me to do the things that I am not as good at. But sometimes when you have no budget and it's a one man band, then
Yeah.
you got to do what you got to do.
Absolutely. I feel like the exact same way. It's like if you put me in front of a microphone, I can talk and I mean, I probably can't act, but I can at least understand acting maybe as much as my peers, right? But like, man, if I had the opportunity to just have someone immensely more talented than me just in front of the camera, then I can work with that footage, then I'm
Mm-hmm.
golden, right? Um,
Yeah.
But I guess another question I could ask then is, if you kind of prefer the more editing side of things or the post production, how do you feel about on site producing or directing compared to working with things in an editor? Like, do you prefer to be in on the ground floor working on things more, or do you prefer when you take it back to your computer and edit it out?
I love being on set. I love
Gotcha.
like being on production. It was honestly like one of the things that I really wanted to focus on the most when it came to my career, like doing more directing, producing,
Sure.
cinematography, things like that when I first started out. But I live in the middle of nowhere, without a lot of resources to do so, and it is what it is. So I definitely like fell into like I kind of have to be a one-man band. So I have
Right.
to be better at post-production and things like that. I mean, things have gotten easier when it comes to that with Zoom and screen recordings and things like that. I recently this year directed the new Completionist intro, which was, I mean, I wasn't on set physically,
Right.
but I could at least like be a part of that process and like was a creative lead in that process, and that we made it work.
Sure.
Um, I function a lot better collaboratively, like bouncing off of people and reading the energy of people,
Right.
and just like I'm a very tactile person. I work really well with my hands and just like
Right.
understanding like what can work and what can't work.
Sure.
Um, yeah, like
Well, and it makes sense why you like film photography then, because it
yeah,
very much a manual process, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, I don't mean to entirely move on. You can continue at this point, but just to
no,
throw
go
another
for it.
caveat question in there, then, like how you mentioned you like having the energy bouncing off of other people. Do you, in general, prefer working with a team than working on your own personal projects, or do you find that like working with a team kind of feels like work while personal projects is more free time?
That is a loaded question.
Sure. And you
Um,
you can take it any direction you want. If you
yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to answer that specifically, then
No, no. I do like working with a team because first off, I'm not good at everything. Just straight up, I'm not. Like,
sure.
and film and videos are kind of inherently a collaborative process, or at least a multidisciplined process. Like,
Sure.
I don't consider myself a good writer, and I don't like writing. Uh, I find writing to be very like strenuous, honestly. Um, so working with good writers who have like who like are, like don't have like a big visual clarity, we can like collaborate on that. I can be like,
Right.
hey, we can like visually do this to tell this point. We can work with this to like emphasize this part of your script. And they'll be like, hey, I've got this idea. Is it possible to do this or this? Um, so I enjoy that aspect a lot. Um, I'm very lucky when it comes to being freelance. I get to work with a lot of really cool people.
Sure.
But in terms of doing personal projects, like I equally enjoy that because it's a very different mental process.
Right.
Um, like the mental process for being collaborative and for work is not going to be the same when you're by yourself for
Yeah.
yourself. There's first of all there's distinctly different motivations. One is money,
Yeah.
and getting food on your plate,
Right.
and the other one is like more fulfillment, or like, and even arguably there's still money, but it's more about like helping your Patreon grow or helping grow a
Right.
brand or XYZ. But there's different methods to go about it. Excuse me. But yeah, I think I definitely don't prefer one or the other.
Sure. You like
Like if
having the,
I
the healthy mix, basically.
yeah, I think that's the best way to go about it. If I had a gun to my head and I had to pick which one I would it would be, I think I would pick personal projects just because it's like ideally if I didn't have to worry about money, and if I
Sure.
didn't have to like worry about the idea of like what people think, or like
Right.
in terms of like career wise, why,
Yeah.
right? Or anything like that. If I didn't have to worry about my career, then like, yeah, I do personal projects and I just be doing
Right.
that.
Well, and do you, as an editor, you often have to deal with a lot of other people's creative visions, right? Do you find that you
Yeah.
struggle with working with other people's visions, or do you think you're pretty fluent with going with other directions and stuff like that?
I think I'm pretty fluent at this point. I
Gotcha.
used to struggle with it a little bit in my early years. I used to like put a lot of myself into that work, um, but as I've gotten better as a freelancer, I've definitely like tried my best to like it comes to like understanding what your like what who your client is and what they think is
Right.
cool and what they want, and it's one of those things where I'm just like I need to how do I make this as cool as possible? Like it
Right.
to a degree, it feels like you as an artist you want to make the shit that like 15-year-old you would like, and
Yeah.
right, and that's kind of what it's like being a freelancer. You're like I am making stuff that like that is like just cool. Like I want to make the cool
Right.
thing. I want
Yeah.
to like I'm very much like one of those editors or one of those designers that's very like exaggerated.
Sure.
Um, so I think that that works well when it comes to understanding what people think is hype or what they think is cool.
Right. So you don't find yourself to be super stubborn when working with other people with your like creative vision, or does it just kind of depend on the project?
It kind of depends on the project, really, because like as an editor, as a freelancer, as all of these things, it's collaborative.
Right.
It's if it's going to be collaborative, then it's not inherently my vision, right?
Right.
Like I have to see other people where they're at and what they want and how can I put my own twist on things. How can I add my own spice, right? Like you don't when you're cooking a dish, you're not like, man, salt's really fucking pulling it in on this one. Like
Right.
it's like a little bit,
Yeah.
um
Absolutely.
yeah, but if a client's like, hey, do what you want, like, and you're given that trust,
Uh-huh.
uh that's extremely empowering. Like
Sure.
because for one, they're like, hey, like you can do things yourself. I trust your vision. I know what you want. I know that the stuff that you do is cool. So when it comes to working for other people, those things can still happen. That
Right.
you can still have the like, hey, I'm known for making this kind of thing, and they want
Yeah.
that. Like, and
Right.
you can just lean either way. I think it's important as a creator to be pretty fluid.
Right. Yeah. Well, does that like freedom ever have the opposite effect where it's almost pressuring you into not understanding the direction you should take it? Like, do you find that you struggle with that at all, or do you think by now you pretty much have a handle on that?
I think it
Because
depends on the project, really.
right, because like I sometimes when given a lot of creative freedom on like a certain project, I find it very difficult to navigate the right path, right? Or sometimes I'll feel
Mm,
like I've gone too far down a certain path to then switch over to a path that might have been better, right? And then next thing I know, my head's just kind of spiraling. I'm just curious, like, if under when people trust that you'll handle it, do you feel like you can properly handle it without much issues with that?
um, for the most part, yes, to answer that
Right.
part of the question, but to deal with that issue distinctly, I think that if a client trusts you, they're like to make something, you need to trust them with good feedback. Like it's
Right.
trust is a two-way street, right? Like if you're struggling to be like, hey, I'm not like sure about this, or like I'm trying to like focus in on this one thing. Do I have the horse blinders on?
Right.
Like what kind of thing does is this even cool, or have I just been staring at it for too long?
Right.
It's I think just having constructive feedback is really good in general. Just like and having to work with people that you trust to give you creative feedback.
Right.
Um, because that's God, working on the internet has been a real miasma when it comes to the idea of constructive criticism.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, YouTube comments suck. They do. They suck.
Except for you guys out there. You guys are great. Everyone else sucks.
It depends.
Yeah, it depends.
There could be someone down there talking mad shit.
Yeah, they very well
I'm sure
could be.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're all good. But, like, constructive criticism needs to be asked for.
Yeah.
Like, straight up. And there needs to be like a distinct understanding of what you need help with. Yeah. And when you're working with a team, it's important to ask for help. It's so important to ask for help. I think there's a real bad like work mentality when it comes to like, if I ask for help, then I look weak to some degree. Right. And it's hard to be like, hey, it's if you feel like you've got this, then you got to try to fucking like live up to it. You got to not be a letdown.
Yeah, sure.
Because especially if you're, for all intents and purposes, replaceable. Yeah. It can be very difficult to mentally navigate that.
Right. And it's tough because the work environment in general, even outside of art, really pushes that like you have to present yourself as someone who's on top of it, and because that's how you get interviews, that's how you get the job and stuff like that. So whenever, even I'm a video editor right now currently also. I mean, just part-time basic lectures for university stuff. Nothing like what you do, basically. But going in, it's hard to get rid of this mindset of like, you have to be the end all on what you do. You have to understand everything that you're doing. Sometimes, but like, it is a relatively creative field where it's very beneficial for me to ask my peers, like, hey, does this look good or whatnot? So I think it's just tough to break out of that mindset though, because the rest of the work environment really tells you not to think that way, basically.
I think that's super true. And on the other side of it, I think like if you're working with a good team and you're working with people that are significantly more senior than you, I think it's still super important to ask for help, right? Because if the people that are more senior than you, they're gonna like acknowledge that you're asking for help and that you actually want to get better. Right. And they're like, yo, if this guy is like actually giving a shit to like make sure that his job is good, then that gives me less to worry about. And I don't have to clean up his mess. Yeah. Which is like great, right? Like if you're like, hey, does this look good? I need another pair of eyes on this, as opposed to like, I fucked up, please help me. Like it's better to like be damage prevention rather than damage control.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. If you're like, hey, it's also like when you're working with a good team, they like check in on you, and that's real good. Sure. At the end of the day, like you're gonna communicate the best you can within however good your team is. I'm very blessed to work with a team that's very like empathetic and connects a lot. I got a message this morning being like, hey, how are you feeling about the project so far? I'm like, I've been a little bit sluggish, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm gonna try and get you a draft like by the end of the day. And he's like, yo, you got this. I'm like, gotcha. Thanks, man. Like it's just having that line of communication is ultimately the end. Like key communication stops like 99% of fucking the world's problems. I swear to God. Like
you don't
just talk to each other. Talk to each other and be honest,
Yeah. And it definitely helps
you get the job done.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing, is that when you're working with a team, you all still have the same goal anyway. So it's not talking to each other properly is going to really halt that goal's progress. I didn't mean to completely derail your point with comment criticism. If you want to circle back to that, you can. Otherwise, I can continue to the next question.
No, I said everything I need to say. Like it's collaborative, right? Like, and gotcha. You need, and there's constructive criticism comes with trust. That's basically it. So absolutely. Like, if you're, and also you want feedback from people that actually give a shit about your content. Yeah, which is definitely what's great about something like Patreon comments, because they're quite literally investing in your work. So you're gonna trust their feedback and like what they want. I've found seniors and your peers.
there's also like a lot of like Discord servers of both close friends, but even semi-close friends that can be invested in what you create, right? And
Totally.
knowing like who to ask for that kind of stuff. There's also Discord servers that are specifically made for giving feedback on creative projects and stuff like that, and subreddits for that matter. So yeah, finding places like that might be better than, you know, Bobby Bill's comment that says your opinion is wrong in this one or something like that, right? Might just be able to be more constructive places to look. But yes, I totally agree with just you have to ask for the feedback though. And, you know, sometimes not that people shouldn't ever be able to give some kind of criticism when you don't ask for it, but in general, being receptive to the criticism is super important in order to actually construct your feedback. And we talked about that a lot with Rasputin, I believe. And it's just something that's really tough with YouTube comments specifically, which is why if you are a YouTube commenter on this video, you may have been insulted. It's our apologies, but we are addressing something that's very big on YouTube and always has been. But anyway, we can move on from this. I don't need to stay on this topic forever. I have a little fun game I want to play. I don't get to play this super often, but I played this with What Up Nico, who is also a graphic designer, who is a graphic designer. I don't mean to call you a graphic designer, but adjacent fields, right? So what I asked him was basically, I asked him to rank the Adobe Creative Cloud programs against each other. And I would love to pick your brain about it too, because it's something I've thought about a lot. I've kind of got my favorites. I've got some I'm not super fond of. And I would just love to hear, what do you think are like, what are your favorite Adobe Creative Cloud programs to like least favorite, basically?
I can't believe this is even a discussion. After Effects is number one, like undisputed champion. Like you cannot beat After Effects. Straight up, you cannot beat After Effects. Like I don't even use Photoshop. I edit my photos in After Effects. I don't draw in Photoshop. I use Clip Studio Paint. If I like Premiere Pro is dog shit. It's terrible. The best thing Premiere Pro has going for it is that it connects with After Effects. Like
this has got to be some of the hottest Adobe takes I've heard from asking this question.
Adobe sucks, bro. Come on. Adobe sucks.
I mean, that's a fair enough point. I think a lot of people could agree with that. I mean, I guess I'd expect such a response from a motion designer specifically for After Effects to be top dog. You know, it's hard to argue that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's nothing that really replaces After Effects besides like even like a lot of DaVinci stuff doesn't work. Like nobody uses Final Cut Pro anymore. Nobody.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's like After Effects is like the one that's just not being competed with currently. Like it's Premiere, there's other editors out there. Yeah, After Effects just. But as someone who's not a motion designer, I will say of all Adobe programs, that's the one that's hardest for me to learn, and a lot of information from other programs don't really transfer to that one. Like that's just general hotkeys and like navigating. As someone who really likes Adobe Premiere, I have a hard time adjusting to how After Effects handles its timeline because it's like a completely different take on it. But that said, at the very least, it will always be better than InDesign in my book, which is probably my least favorite Adobe program out there, just because everything is in a pull-down menu. But functionality wise, they can all do great things, but if they can all do great things, then it's like, you got to start nitpicking some of the controls, stuff like that. But I got to say, putting a C-tier program like After Effects as top is very interesting, but I don't know what else to expect.
Don't call it a C-tier because you can't play it.
I guess that's the problem with this question.
That's like calling Melee Fox a C tier because you can't play the character. Are you serious?
I can't play any Melee character. They're all F tier.
That's scrub quotes right there, bro.
I mean, it's just with regards to program fluidity.
There's literally no alternative to After Effects. It's like people buy Creative Cloud and pay that stupid monthly service for After Effects, and they're like, guess I'll use DaVinci because it actually has good color grading on it.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I just
I'm
hate
just
motion
saying, bro.
graphics. That field is just so hard for me to navigate.
No,
I
that's
have mad
fair.
respect for people who can do it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's the whole reason I wanted to bring you on. It's
Yeah.
just like trying to understand. Man, they brought coding into that thing. Like, oh
Oh
my
yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
it's an
Expressions
intimidating
as a
one.
whole, it's a whole fucking can of worms.
Yeah,
Expressions.
it is.
I think that's, on the other hand, that's kind of what I like a lot about After Effects is that like there is quite literally limitless potential.
Sure.
As soon as like your tool, as soon as you completely figure out your tool, it basically becomes useless to you. Like
Right.
there's only like a cap of like how many things you can do with it, which is why I consider it significant on the tier list. I would consider it significantly higher than Premiere because Premiere is, it's basically like the strength of Premiere is like how fast you can cut stuff together and how easy it is and
Yeah.
how easy it is to
Sure.
understand. It's the middle ground.
Right.
Premiere is like a solid mid high tier because it's super easy to understand. It does exactly what it
Solid
needs to
mid
do.
high tier. I'm
Yeah, it's a
curious what your
solid
B
mid.
tier is. If After Effects is A tier, what's B tier for you?
Probably Illustrator, I think.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
I think
Solid.
Illustrator would probably be it. I don't like using Illustrator, but
Yeah.
like Illustrator is like very powerful. It does a lot of very distinct things. It works with every other Adobe program as
Yeah.
well, like collaborative wise. So like if you're working with like a really good graphic designer, like it's super easy to do like a lot of your
Sure.
work.
Yeah.
Probably
You agree about InDesign, right? I mean, in terms of Adobe programs.
I
Yeah.
absolutely agree about InDesign.
I'm a
The
graphic
thing is, there's
designer, and I still agree with that one. That one's just so frustrating.
there's a ton of stuff with the thing is there's so many Adobe products that I just like
Yeah,
don't
there are. I
like,
mean, I don't
give a
expect you to
shit.
rank all of them. I just,
Like I don't, bro. I'm not gonna rank Dreamweaver. I'm not gonna
Or
rank Adobe
are you
Dreamweaver.
gonna rank Media Encoder though? I mean, that's got to get a rank, right?
Yeah, Media Encoder is. I have such a tumultuous.
Well, Nico explained it as ranking Media Encoder would be like ranking a wrench or something, like just a random screwdriver.
Yeah,
So it's like it's
right.
hard to actually rank it. But
Screwdriver is a screwdriver is an A tier though.
I guess so.
But I think because the thing is, Media Encoder has a lot of problems,
Right.
but like it works when it needs to. And the thing is, like, whenever I bring something from Premiere into Media Encoder, and sometimes Media Encoder's like, it's not gonna work. I'm like, okay, I'll just render it through Premiere, and now it suddenly works.
And then it works.
Like,
yeah.
So I'm like, well, Media Encoder like needs to be below Premiere, then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it just kind of objectively.
Yeah.
I think I would put Photoshop probably either the same tier or slightly above Premiere.
Interesting. So you wouldn't even put it up with Illustrator. You actually photo edit on After Effects. That's something I've never heard of before.
I know quite a few people that do that because like when you're already adapt with After Effects, it's like, well, I know where all my effects are. I know how things work.
So.
And there's a lot of tools that Photoshop is like straight up missing. Like I cannot believe how much shit is missing from Photoshopping.
Oh, it could
It's
be.
kind of weird. Audition's pretty up there as well because I'm not an audiophile. I'll straight up say I'm not an audio guy.
Me neither.
But like,
I'm a podcaster and I still don't know anything about audio.
But like, from every audio engineer that I know, they're like, Audition fucking rules, bro. Audition's got so much going for it, and like, I would put it, I guess, like the same tier as Premiere in that degree, or like, or even higher. Like, Adobe Acrobat's probably like a solid D tier.
I don't think I've actually used. Oh, Acrobat, that's the PDF reader.
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, I think it's just that all PDF readers suck. Like I've yet to find a good PDF reader. That's probably what it is. It's not Acrobat's fault. It's just like PDFs suck.
It's not Acrobat's fault. It's every fucking boomer that asks you like, how do I open this? Fault.
Yeah. It really is. It really is.
Yeah, like I'll put it this way. I enjoy Premiere. I do enjoy Premiere. I use Premiere as it's my primary editor,
Yeah,
but like it's missing a lot of tools.
sure.
Uh, it sometimes it's sometimes it just straight up like won't work.
Right.
Um, it chugs a ton.
It does. Yeah.
Just it's like Premiere's solid. I'll say it's. I mean, the thing is with a lot of video editors that like I've been out here trying to like be objective, like what has the most tools and stuff, but like
Right.
the best video editor is whichever one like you learned with, right? Like
Yeah, like whichever
that you're
one
most comfortable with.
feels like comfortable. Yeah, exactly. Like it's like a comfortable pair of shoes. You know, you don't want to walk around for a long time in uncomfy shoes, even if they are more stylish or something, right? And I think that's why I
Yeah.
like Premiere so much is that the comfort's there. Like you said, ease of access. It's just, you know, you can get things done super quickly on Premiere, which is really nice,
Yeah.
even if it's not super advanced stuff. But also, like, I totally get the difference in our professions too. Like, if I knew anything about motion design, I might like After Effects a lot more. So,
Yeah. It's After Effects is just like such a powerhouse. I feel like
yeah,
that you can make almost anything in it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, we don't need to stay on the rankings forever. It's just a fun little game I don't often get to play with people, but you know, because it's stuff I
No,
think about
yeah.
all the time. But it's like most of the people on here wouldn't know about InDesign or something, right? It's usually just an excuse for me to trash on InDesign, but uh, I'm glad
Bro, I
someone
get
else
riled up.
agrees. Yeah.
I get
Um, so moving on to another project. Basically, you know, because there's so many different avenues of, or so many different creative art forms you have to pull from in order to get your work done. Are there one parts of your job that you basically enjoy a lot more than others, like certain crafts than other? We briefly talked about, you know, being on site recording stuff like that, but like, is there something you dread in the post production world or live production world, while other things that you just like a lot more, or is there not much of a difference between your preferences?
hmm.
Like for an example, I you know, I really don't like the actual filming part. Like if I have a camera in front of me, I'd prefer to just have that kind of that part done basically. Because I don't like worrying about positioning the camera or making eye contact with the camera and stuff like that. So that's something that has to get done for my videos. But like, there's definitely other things I prefer a lot more than that. And I didn't know if there's anything similar with what you do.
I mean, there is and there isn't. There's parts that I like more, and there's definitely parts that I like less. I don't think there's anything distinctly that I dread anymore. I
Sure.
used to really a huge reason why I got into motion design and visual effects and stuff was because I was just really, really sick of editing videos, and I was, you know, it's easy. It's easier. No, it's not easy. It's easier to get work uh, as a video editor because people
Sure.
need clips cut, right? But God, I got so burnt out and done with it.
Right.
Um, I find it I found it very very samey, very monotonous.
Sure.
Um, I think, but now that I'm working like more motion design stuff, um, the part that I dread the most is, I mean, normally I would say something like, I don't know when the next gig is, but like I have consistent work and I'm very blessed to do so.
Sure.
But like, I think it depends on project to project because I very much like
Right.
separate stuff. Um, I genuinely don't like working with like Illustrator too much. I'm very bad at it,
Sure.
and I don't like working on something where it feels that like the creative agency is getting taken from me, or
Right.
or someone has like kind of blatantly like a kind of a shit idea, and it's
Sure.
like, well, everything's kind of built around this idea and I have to like work with it. It doesn't happen
Right.
often, but like when I'm not when I'm when I'm not encouraged to work on the thing, that's when it sucks the most.
Gotcha.
uh like the things that I dread the most about about it is, you know, a lot more interpersonal and like
Sure.
more personal in general, rather than like distinctly a part of the creative process. Because I feel like, you know, I'm a freelancer, I'm self-employed. Like if I didn't like my job, I wouldn't be fucking doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But I didn't ask if I can swear on this, and I've just been an absolute sailor.
It's all good. Yeah, I like the
Yeah.
guests to articulate themselves as naturally as they like. So you're all
I
good.
do very crudely.
Well, what
Um,
about like procrastination and stuff like that? Like, do you find it tough to reach certain deadlines? Do you ever get demotivated and just not work on things at all? Like, in general, how well do you handle that kind of stuff?
so I think procrastination happens to all of us, right?
Sure.
I don't miss a deadline, like straight up. Like I do. If I miss a deadline, it's not by my own effects.
Right.
It's because of like a storm, like my house flooded, or a
Right.
storm hit, or like the
Sure.
internet's down and I can't upload everything all at once, or something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
the production just has like a obscenely, maybe there was like a weird note that needed changed, or a render issue or something like that. It's
Right.
never like due to procrastination. um I work a lot as it is, and it's easy to get burnt out.
Sure.
So the thing that I've been trying to practice the most is trying to regulate like my energy levels and like my mentality and my mental health, in order uh, to to navigate the areas of burnout.
For sure.
Because when you work on something creative every day, it's like all the time and barely take weekends, then like you're gonna be creative. You're gonna be burnt out. Like
Yeah.
that's with any job, right? Like
Absolutely.
I love my job. I really love my job. I'm so blessed to have it. I've worked really hard to have it, but like that doesn't stop it from being a job, and it doesn't stop it from being
Right.
a source of burnout. So I don't trust motivation either.
Sure.
I don't think motivation is a good resource. I don't think it is something to depend on. I don't think it should be trusted. It's the
Interesting.
real. It is the creative monkey paw. If you're like, I'm gonna do this when I'm motivated, then you're never gonna fucking do it.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, you're never gonna do it, because you're gonna. No one's motivated to do a task, and as soon as you look at work or something creative as a task, then you're not gonna be motivated to do it.
Right.
Like, you can be inspired, and that's different, but like motivation is, if you rely on motivation, then you just lack discipline, and discipline is like 100% the most important thing to not just be a good creative, but to like
Right.
function as a human being. Like you can't go to the gym and get super ripped if you're not gonna go to the gym every day, or like or
Right.
have like a distinct plan, and have like all this business. Like you need to do that with your brain, you need to do that with your creative energy too. You need to be
Yeah.
disciplined in order to get stuff done.
Yeah.
um, my boss is not going to tolerate me saying sorry, I didn't get it in because I wasn't motivated.
Right.
Like, no one's going to take that excuse. You're if you give that excuse, you're a lazy piece of shit. Like, sorry, bro. Like,
Right.
you got to get your shit together. Like, you got to be
Yeah.
disciplined to do what you want, and discipline is how you learn the best.
Right. I think that's a such a fascinating way to put it, to not put your trust in motivation but instead put it in discipline, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like something you might have already come to without realizing you came to that conclusion, but it's like it's it is very true where it's like you have to train yourself and discipline yourself to get things done, as opposed to thinking of things in terms of motivation, because I guess,
Mm-hmm.
motivation just comes and goes whenever it wants. And you're
Yeah.
so right about like just waiting just for when you're motivated is not going to get you anywhere. It's something like, we've it's talked about a lot, but the way you put it is very elegant. I very much like that. I love finding those little
Thank you.
tidbits. Like, I'm going to bring that up in future episodes and stuff like that. So very well
Yeah.
put. Well, and
Thank you.
this might be
Sorry, I was.
I was just gonna say this might be a good transition to what I was gonna ask you next, which is just like, what piece of advice would you give to others out there who want to get into your industry? and maybe motivation kind of plays into that, right? But is there something
Yeah.
that like you kind of wish you knew going into it that you could tell other people and save them some hassle?
God, this is actually exactly what I was gonna say just now. People are creatures of habit. Like we kind of inherently are. You know, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you get dressed. Like you could wake up, not brush your teeth or get dressed, but like
Right.
it feels good to work within like a distinct rhythm, to have structure in your life, and those things need to be taught to you. They need to be like something that you need to actively work at.
Right.
So you know, it's why like artists say like draw every day, which is what they're saying is like you should make kind of a habit of drawing and like making it like a thing that you kind of live, breathe,
Yeah.
and kind of work with. Not like you have this task of drawing every day, because then it becomes work, right? And then
Yeah.
you're never gonna like give yourself a break, and then it'll suck all the joy out of the thing that you're doing for joy.
Right.
Which is a distinct thing that people seem to butt heads about.
Yeah.
So I say form good habits is like my 100% good piece of advice. Like you need to form good habits about how you go about your life. Have a hobby outside of being creative as well. Please,
Right.
for the love of God, do that. Like it's why I don't monetize or like do anything. I mean, I put them on Patreon, but like I don't do anything career orientated with my photography, because it's just
Right.
like I need a better outlet, or you know, drawing or whatever.
Yeah.
But like you need to work within a space for yourself that you can build up yourself,
Right.
because people are attracted to like people, like I mean people with discipline, people that can actually like be dependable and can be
Yeah.
reliable. No one wants to hire someone who, you know, doesn't post shit like basically ever. Like because like I said, Twitter is the business card is the modern business card.
Right.
If you're out here like posting on Twitter about like how you're super unmotivated or how you're sad all the time, then people are gonna be like, this guy probably doesn't have the mental fortitude to
Right.
be hired, which sucks, right? Because you want to, which is such a sucky thing to say, but like, you know, because you want to be open about your mental health and all that business. Yeah. But like
Right.
but having that be through also like the same method of how you get work is something you need to balance. Like you need an alt account if you want to vent on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an interesting, because like, yeah, it's something you see quite often, and it's you know, not something I usually bat an eye towards, but you know, if you are going to be using Twitter as a business outlet and as a means of getting to know other potential employers and coworkers and stuff like that, then yeah, having a separate space for that might be a good thing to think about. I guess in general, I've typically approached my account with mostly just, you know, sharing when I upload and stuff like that, very basic things. But you know, if I ever felt the need to where like I need a space to vent about this personal stuff, which sometimes that's very therapeutic for people, right? Maybe having an alternate space for that would be a good way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like mental health is so goddamn important, especially if you're a creative. So like I understand that it's easy to have your Twitter act like your diary, but like I think people kind of forget that like literally the entire world can see that.
Yeah.
Like if before I post anything, do I think, would I say this like into a microphone in front of a stadium?
Right, on a soapbox.
Like I probably wouldn't. And you know, I'm very lucky to have people in my life that I can emotionally recluse to.
Yeah.
I think like I personally definitely structure my Twitter to be more like one business and creative orientated, and just me like sharing like silly shit jokes. Because you know you gotta have. I like being funny. I like my silly thoughts. Like,
sure.
I'm you know, I don't want to be a fucking like all business all the time. Like, damn, I'm a human being.
Being funny doesn't hurt your business either, right? Like those can coexist. So. You know.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, like I'm not gonna. The more creatively focused I've gone, the less personal I've gone on Twitter, which I think has
Yeah,
been healthy for me.
definitely. Well, on the show, I'm always, we cover this a lot, but like always advocating like this idea of just thinking very heavily about what you post before you do it, because social media very much does broadcast things to other people, which when you use to your advantage in a business situation is very good. But otherwise, you got to be very careful. And yeah. Well, and that's I love the way you intertwined both those really good pieces of advice with just putting your trust in discipline as opposed to motivation, and how well that correlates with just networking and understanding what you're putting out there and who might be seeing it and stuff like that. Probably the most unique response I've gotten to this question, so I appreciate that for sure. And kind of on that note, we're actually just about out of time. So
really?
I very much,
Definitely.
I know it really does. It's always, it literally is always such a blast doing these shows, because I learned so much through them. A lot of these tidbits through this conversation, I'm going to think about like years to come, and then just randomly bring them out in conversation. Then people are going to think I'm smart. So it's very beneficial for me and my ego, which apparently needs to expand even more. I don't know. But also it's just a pleasure to hear other people's stories and perspectives and stuff like that, even if they do things like put Premiere on C tier. So I very much appreciate this conversation. And
listen, Premiere is the Mario of Adobe, okay? Like,
what's wrong with Mario?
There's
I like
nothing
Mario.
wrong with Mario. That's why it's C tier. It's middle of the ground.
Oh boy. Well, tier list aside, would you care to tell everyone out there where they might be able to find you, what kind of stuff you're working on, and just anything in general you want to promote, while keeping in mind that I have no idea when this podcast is going to air, so maybe not super timely stuff, but in general, where should people find your work?
Well, you can find my work on Twitter. I post almost everything there. I also have a Patreon that is creatively focused. Everything I post on there, everything I make goes on there. So I post on there like once a week. I also work on The Completionist, so youtube.com/The Completionist. If you see any fancy motion graphics or the intro, I made that and I work on that. Very cool, very happy. So yeah, I also have an Instagram, I guess, Nickolai Boulton. It's whatever, dude. Like, I'm trying to like step away from social media just in general.
You and me both, my man. You and me both. Well, in the meantime, while Nick is still on social media, you can still check him out in those places. And of course, all the things he's mentioned will be linked in the description. As a heads up, if you are listening here on Patreon, these should be uploaded in clips on the channel. I'm actually changing some formatting stuff. I'll let you guys know about that soon. If you're listening not on Patreon, then on YouTube or something like that, just to let you know, these are also on your favorite podcasting apps, including Spotify, Amazon, and Apple, and pretty much any other app you might think of. So if you just want to listen on your commute or something like that, feel free to do so. And of course, if you're watching on something where you can leave a like or something like that, feel free to do that as well. I very much appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys watching and your support. And of course, I'll see you guys in the next episode. So long.
Thank you. Goodbye.